The whole thing is sort of set up. They have to have Prince Harry coming in because he's her ticket. We wouldn't talk about Meghan Markle.
The discovery came without warning. Palace investigators found a bank account that Meghan Markle had kept hidden for years, containing transactions that raised immediate red flags. King Charles and Prince William realized they could no longer protect her. The account revealed something that went beyond simple financial mistakes. And when the full details emerged, they made a decision that would shock the world. The routine audit that changed everything. The finance office at Buckingham Palace operates with centuries of careful precision. Every pound spent by the royal household is documented, tracked, and reviewed. Most years, the annual audit is straightforward and unremarkable. But in early December 2025, something unusual appeared in the numbers. Margaret Hartley, a senior accountant with nearly 20 years in the Royal Finance Office, made the discovery. She knew the patterns. She understood how money moved through various royal households. When she reviewed the Sussex household accounts from before Harry and Meghan stepped back from royal duties, something caught her attention. Small discrepancies, payments that seemed slightly off, expenses that did not match official records of engagements. Another accountant might have dismissed them as clerical errors. But Margaret had learned that small inconsistencies sometimes pointed to larger problems. She spent 3 days reviewing the records carefully. She cross-referenced payment dates with public schedules. She compared invoices with actual events. The more she looked, the more concerned she became. The discrepancies followed a pattern. Money was moving in ways that did not align with standard operations. Margaret brought her findings to Thomas Blackwell, who had managed royal finances through 3 different reigns. When she showed him what she had found, his expression changed. This required immediate escalation. Within hours, the matter reached Sir Clive Alderton, the King's private secretary. He understood that financial irregularities could become catastrophic if mishandled. Any suggestion of improper use would trigger both media firestorm and parliamentary scrutiny. He ordered a full but quiet investigation. A small team was assembled. Margaret and Thomas from finance, 2 senior legal advisors, a discreet investigator with experience in financial forensics. They received strict instructions: no leaks, no discussions outside the team. This matter stayed contained. The team worked through December, analyzing bank statements, wire transfers, vendor contracts, and expense reports. Hidden in that paperwork was something that should not have been there: payments flowing to a consulting firm that no one had heard of. The amounts seemed excessive for standard public relations work. Sarah Chen, the lead investigator, dug deeper into the consulting firm. Corporate records showed registration in Delaware, known for privacy-friendly business laws. The company had minimal online presence, no website, no social media, red flags everywhere. When the firm's bank records arrived, they revealed something shocking. The money from the Sussex household did not stay in the firm. It was immediately transferred to an offshore account in the Channel Islands. The investigation team spent Christmas working in total secrecy. They traced money flows across multiple countries. They built timelines showing when money moved and why. What emerged was deeply troubling. The offshore account had been opened in early 2019, shortly after Meghan and Harry's wedding. Money began flowing in almost immediately. Hundreds of thousands of pounds over time, enough to raise serious questions. The most disturbing element was the timing. The largest deposits occurred shortly after major royal events, after important family gatherings, after state occasions, after private meetings that later became subjects of media speculation. The correlation was too consistent to ignore. Someone with inside access to royal activities was benefiting financially from that access. Sarah Chen presented her findings to Sir Clive in early January 2026. The hidden offshore account, the pattern of payments, the suspicious timing. While she could not prove illegal activity, the arrangement violated every protocol governing how royal family members handled their finances. Sir Clive asked the question everyone was thinking: who controlled the offshore account? The answer pointed to Meghan Markle. The account had been set up shortly after she joined the royal family. The consulting firm was run by someone with previous connections to her. Sir Clive made the decision that would change everything. King Charles had to be informed immediately, and after the king knew, Prince William would need to know as well. What they had discovered was not just a financial scandal. It was evidence that someone in the royal family had been monetizing their position in ways that violated every principle the institution stood for. The account nobody knew existed. The offshore account sat in a bank in Jersey, one of the Channel Islands that wealthy people around the world use for financial privacy. From the outside, it looked like thousands of other accounts, legitimate, legal, protected by laws designed to shield clients from unwanted attention. But when palace investigators dug into the details, they discovered something far more complex than a simple savings account. The account had been opened in March 2019. The timing was significant. Meghan had been a working member of the royal family for less than a year. She was still learning protocols, still navigating her new role, still building her public image. Yet during this period, someone with connections to her had set up sophisticated financial arrangements that would take investigators months to fully understand. The account was not in Meghan's name. That would have been too obvious. Instead, it was held by a corporate entity registered in the British Virgin Islands. That company was owned by another company registered in Delaware, and that Delaware company was managed by a trust based in Switzerland. Each layer added distance. Each layer made tracing ownership harder. Each layer provided what lawyers call plausible deniability. But palace investigators had resources and determination. They worked with financial experts who specialized in unraveling complex corporate structures. They obtained court orders that forced banks to reveal information normally kept secret. And slowly, they traced the ownership chain back to its source. The beneficial owner, the person who ultimately controlled the account and could access its funds, had direct ties to Meghan Markle. The account structure was sophisticated enough to suggest professional help. Someone had designed this arrangement specifically to hide ownership while maintaining access. Someone had understood exactly how to navigate international banking laws. Someone had known which jurisdictions to use and which corporate structures provided maximum protection. This was not something an ordinary person could set up alone. Money flowed into the account from multiple sources. Some came through the consulting firm that had been billing the Sussex household, but other deposits came from entertainment companies based in Los Angeles, production firms that worked in television and film, media organizations that covered celebrity news. The amounts varied, but they were substantial. £10,000 here, $25,000 there, occasionally $50,000 in a single transaction. What made investigators particularly suspicious was the timing of these deposits. They occurred in clusters, with several payments arriving within days of each other, followed by weeks of silence. The clusters often coincided with major royal events or family moments that later became media stories. A large payment arrived 3 days after a private family meeting at Sandringham. Another significant deposit came shortly after a state banquet where Meghan had been photographed with several heads of state. The pattern suggested coordination. Someone was providing information or access, and someone else was paying for it. The entertainment and media companies making deposits were not random. Several had produced content about the royal family. Others had connections to journalists who covered palace news. The web of relationships pointed toward a disturbing possibility. Royal access was being monetized. The account also showed outgoing transactions. Money did not just sit there accumulating, it was being moved regularly. Some transfers went to accounts in the United States, others flowed to property investments in California. The spending pattern suggested someone building wealth quietly, diversifying assets across multiple locations and investment types. Palace legal advisors reviewed the evidence carefully. They understood that proving wrongdoing would be difficult. Offshore accounts are legal. Receiving payments is legal. Even having complex corporate structures is legal. But the totality of the arrangement violated royal protocols completely. Members of the royal family are not supposed to profit from their positions. They are not supposed to monetize access to family members or inside information. They are not supposed to hide financial arrangements from palace officials. Sir Clive Alderton looked at the evidence spread across his desk: bank statements, corporate documents, transaction records. The account nobody knew existed had revealed a secret world that threatened everything the monarchy claimed to represent. William's private confrontation. Prince William learned about the discovery on a cold January morning at Kensington Palace. Sir Clive Alderton arrived without warning, carrying a leather briefcase that held documents William was not prepared to see. The meeting was scheduled as a routine briefing, but William knew immediately from Sir Clive's expression that something serious had happened. Sir Clive laid out the evidence methodically: the hidden offshore account, the suspicious timing of payments, the corporate structures designed to obscure ownership, the connections back to Meghan. William listened in silence, his jaw tightening with each new revelation. He had suspected for years that Meghan's motives were not what they appeared to be, but this exceeded even his worst assumptions. William had never trusted Meghan completely. From the beginning, something about her felt calculated. The way she performed for cameras, the way she positioned herself in photographs, the way she seemed to understand media manipulation better than people who had been born into royal life. He had tried to warn Harry before the wedding. He had suggested a longer engagement, more time to truly know each other. Harry had responded with anger, accusing William of jealousy and prejudice. That conversation had damaged their relationship in ways that never fully healed. Harry chose Meghan over family counsel. He chose love, or what he believed was love, over the caution that William offered. And William had stepped back, hoping he was wrong, hoping that time would prove his concerns unfounded. Now, sitting across from Sir Clive with evidence of financial impropriety spread before him, William felt a bitter vindication he did not want. The evidence suggested that Meghan had been monetizing her royal position from almost the moment she gained it. She had built a secret financial structure while smiling for cameras and speaking about service. She had accepted payments from entertainment companies while attending state functions. She had turned access to the royal family into a commodity. And she had done it all while Harry remained apparently unaware. William asked Sir Clive the difficult questions. Was Harry involved? Did he know about the account? The investigation had found no evidence of Harry's participation. His name appeared nowhere in the corporate structures. No payments flowed to accounts he controlled. He seemed genuinely ignorant of what his wife had been doing. That made the situation even more painful. Harry had sacrificed his relationship with family to protect Meghan, not knowing she was betraying the institution he had been born into. William wanted to confront Meghan immediately. He wanted to demand answers, to force her to explain herself. But Sir Clive counseled patience. They needed to inform King Charles first. This decision could not be made by William alone. Regardless of how he felt personally, the king had to understand the full scope of what had been discovered. William agreed, though anger burned in his chest. He thought about all the family gatherings where Meghan had sat across from him, smiling and making conversation. He thought about the christenings and weddings and formal events where she had played the role of devoted duchess. All of it had been a performance. All of it had been cover for something darker. He also thought about Harry, his brother, the person he had protected throughout childhood, the person he had stood beside through their mother's death and the painful years that followed. Harry was about to learn that his wife had been using their family for financial gain. Harry was about to face a truth that would destroy him. William made a decision. Before the king was informed, before any official action was taken, he needed to speak with his father privately, not as Prince of Wales to king, but as son to father, because what came next would tear the family apart in ways they might never recover from. And William wanted Charles to understand that despite everything, despite all the anger and betrayal, this was still about family. The meeting with Sir Clive ended. William sat alone in his office for a long time afterward, staring at nothing, feeling the weight of what was coming, following the money trail. The forensic accountants worked with the precision of surgeons. They understood that in complex financial investigations, every detail mattered. A single transaction could unlock an entire network. A date could reveal a pattern. A recipient's name could connect seemingly unrelated payments. They approached the offshore account like archaeologists approaching an ancient site, carefully brushing away layers to reveal what lay beneath. The team began by organizing every transaction chronologically. They built spreadsheets that showed money flowing in and money flowing out. They color-coded sources, they tagged dates, they cross-referenced amounts. What emerged was a financial map that told a story more clearly than any witness testimony could. The earliest deposit into the account arrived in April 2019, £20,000 from a Los Angeles-based production company called Westridge Media. The company specialized in celebrity documentaries and reality television. On the surface, the payment appeared normal. Entertainment companies paid for consulting services all the time. But investigators dug deeper into Westridge Media's history. The company had produced exactly one project before the payment to Meghan's account, a short documentary about minor celebrities that never gained significant attention. After the payment, Westridge suddenly gained access to produce content featuring former royal staff members, people who had worked at Kensington Palace during Meghan's time there, people who had stories to tell about life behind palace walls. The connection was impossible to ignore. More payments followed over the months. A deposit of £15,000 came from a British tabloid's parent company just days after a private family dinner at Windsor Castle. That same week, the tabloid published an exclusive story about tensions between Meghan and Catherine, containing details that only someone present at the dinner could have known. The timing was too precise to be coincidental. Another significant payment arrived in June 2019, £35,000 from an American public relations firm. 2 weeks later, several positive profiles of Meghan appeared in major magazines, all using similar language and focusing on identical talking points. The articles praised her modernizing influence on the monarchy and her commitment to progressive causes. The coordination suggested a paid campaign rather than organic coverage. The investigators found payments connected to specific royal events. £5,000 arrived the day after Meghan attended a state banquet with visiting dignitaries. The payment came from a company that published celebrity gossip online. That company soon after released detailed information about private conversations at the banquet, including who sat where and what was discussed. Information that should have remained confidential. Perhaps most disturbing were payments linked to family photographs. The royal family took private photos at christenings, weddings, and holiday gatherings. These images were personal, meant only for family members. Yet several ended up published in magazines or appearing on websites. Each time a private photo leaked, investigators found a payment into Meghan's account within days. The amounts ranged from £10,000 to £25,000, depending on the exclusivity of the image. The outgoing transactions told another story. Money leaving the account flowed primarily to American investments, real estate purchases in California, stock portfolios managed by firms in New York, business investments in entertainment ventures. Meghan was building a financial foundation separate from Harry, separate from the royal family, using money that appeared to come from monetizing her position. One transaction particularly caught investigators' attention. A payment of £50,000 went to a legal firm in Los Angeles. The date of that payment coincided exactly with the period when Meghan and Harry were negotiating their exit from royal duties. The legal firm specialized in entertainment contracts and media rights. It appeared Meghan was planning her departure while still actively working as a royal, using money obtained through questionable means to fund her exit strategy. The money trail painted a clear picture. Meghan had systematically monetized access, information, and influence from the moment she entered the royal family. She had built a hidden financial empire while performing the role of devoted duchess. And she had done it with a sophistication that suggested careful planning rather than opportunistic mistakes. The palace's impossible position. The emergency meeting convened in the most secure room at Buckingham Palace. Present were King Charles's most trusted advisors, senior legal counsel, and the head of palace communications. Everyone understood the gravity of what they were facing. This was not a scandal that could be managed with careful statements and strategic silence. This was existential. Sir Clive Alderton presented the evidence to the assembled group. He spoke calmly, but his words carried devastating weight. A member of the royal family appeared to have been selling access and information for years. The amounts totaled hundreds of thousands of pounds. The sophistication of the operation suggested deliberate planning rather than innocent mistakes. The legal advisors spoke first. Stripping a royal title was not a simple administrative action. It required navigating constitutional territory that had rarely been tested in modern times. There were questions of jurisdiction, questions of due process, questions of what evidence would be legally sufficient to justify such a drastic step. One advisor pointed out that Meghan could challenge any decision in court, turning a private matter into a very public legal battle. The communications team offered an equally grim assessment. If the palace moved against Meghan, she would respond with maximum force. She had proven herself skilled at manipulating public opinion. She had media connections and public sympathy, particularly in America where many viewed her as a victim of royal bigotry and rigid tradition. Any action against her would be framed as persecution, regardless of the evidence. But doing nothing carried its own catastrophic risks. If the hidden account became public knowledge through leaks or investigative journalism, the palace would appear complicit in covering up financial impropriety. Members of parliament would demand investigations. The press would question whether public funds through the sovereign grant had been misused. The monarchy's already fragile public support could collapse entirely. One advisor suggested a middle approach: quiet negotiation with Meghan, present the evidence privately and demand she return the money. In exchange, the matter would remain sealed. She would agree never to use royal titles for commercial gain, and the palace would not pursue criminal charges or public exposure. William, who had been invited to the meeting at his father's request, rejected this immediately. He argued that negotiating with Meghan would give her leverage to demand concessions. She could threaten to go public with her own accusations. She could claim bigotry or abuse. She could turn herself into a martyr while painting the family as villains. Appeasement would fail, because Meghan had already proven she operated without regard for family loyalty or institutional integrity. Another concern haunted the room. What about Harry? If the palace stripped Meghan's title, they would be publicly declaring her guilty of serious misconduct. Harry would have to choose between his wife and his family yet again. Most believed he would choose Meghan, which meant losing him completely. The rift that already existed would become permanent and irreparable. King Charles had remained silent throughout most of the discussion, but now he spoke. He acknowledged the pain this would cause Harry. He acknowledged the public relations nightmare that would follow. He acknowledged every argument for caution and compromise. But then he said something that shifted the room's energy. The monarchy survived not because of its power, but because of its principles. For centuries, the institution had claimed to represent duty, service, and honor above personal gain. If they allowed someone to monetize royal access without consequences, they betrayed everything they claimed to stand for. The institution would become a fraud, and once people believed it was a fraud, no amount of careful management could save it. The evidence was overwhelming. The behavior was indefensible, and regardless of the personal cost, regardless of the political fallout, some lines could not be crossed without response. Meghan had crossed that line repeatedly and deliberately. The meeting ended with a consensus. King Charles would review the evidence personally. He would make the final decision. But everyone in that room understood which direction he was leaning. The palace's impossible position was about to become a definitive choice. Charles makes his decision. King Charles spent 3 days alone with the evidence. He dismissed his staff, canceled his appointments, and locked himself in his private study at Clarence House. The documents covered his desk in neat stacks: bank statements, corporate filings, transaction records. Each page represented another betrayal of trust, another violation of the principles he had spent his life upholding. He read everything multiple times. He wanted to find an explanation that would make this less damaging than it appeared. Perhaps Meghan had been poorly advised. Perhaps she had not understood the rules. Perhaps there was context that would change the meaning of what looked like calculated misconduct. But the more he read, the less plausible those explanations became. The sophistication of the financial arrangements proved this was not ignorance or innocent error. Someone had deliberately constructed layers of corporate entities to hide ownership. Someone had timed payments to coincide with royal events. Someone had monetized access to private family moments and confidential information. That someone appeared to be his daughter-in-law. Charles thought about Harry constantly during those 3 days. His younger son had always been vulnerable, always searching for belonging after losing his mother so young. Meghan had offered Harry something he desperately wanted: a partner who seemed to understand him, who promised to build a life away from the suffocating expectations of royal duty. Harry had chosen that promise over his family's concerns. Now Charles had to tell Harry that the woman he loved, the mother of his children, had been using the family for financial gain. The conversation would destroy whatever fragile connections still existed between father and son. Harry would defend Meghan. He would refuse to believe the evidence. He would accuse the family of persecution. The rift would become permanent. But Charles also thought about William, his heir, the future of the monarchy. William had warned them all about Meghan before the wedding. He had seen something that others missed or chose to ignore. William had been proven right, and now he was watching to see if his father had the strength to act on that truth. More than family dynamics, Charles wrestled with institutional responsibility. He had waited his entire life to become king. He had endured decades of criticism, personal scandal, and public mockery. He had rebuilt his reputation through dedication to charitable work and environmental causes. He had finally ascended to the throne with a genuine desire to modernize the monarchy while preserving its essential dignity. If he failed to act now, that entire effort would be undermined. The message would be clear. Royal titles could be used for personal enrichment without consequences. The institution would be exposed as protecting its own regardless of their actions. Public trust, already fragile, would evaporate completely. Charles consulted with constitutional experts about the legal mechanisms for removing titles. The process was complex but possible. He had the authority as sovereign to request that Parliament strip titles through an Act of Parliament, or he could issue a letters patent removing them through royal prerogative. Either path would be public and controversial, but both were legally sound. He also consulted privately with the Archbishop of Canterbury, not about law, but about conscience. Was it right to publicly humiliate Meghan, even if her actions warranted punishment? Was there a way to act with justice while maintaining mercy? The Archbishop reminded him that mercy without accountability was not truly merciful. It enabled continued wrongdoing and harmed others. On the fourth day, Charles emerged from his study. He called Sir Clive Alderton and gave clear instructions. Meghan's titles would be formally removed, but before any public announcement, Harry would be informed privately. He deserved to hear this from his father, not from a palace statement. Charles would write to Harry personally. He would explain the evidence. He would express love for his son even while taking action against his son's wife. He would offer Harry a choice: stand with Meghan and accept permanent distance from the family, or acknowledge the truth and begin rebuilding trust. The decision was made. Now came the harder part: living with the consequences. The private letter to Harry. King Charles wrote the letter by hand. He sat at his desk with fountain pen and royal stationery, choosing his words with the care of someone who understood this might be the last meaningful communication he would ever have with his younger son. The letter took hours to compose. Multiple drafts were started and discarded before he found the right balance between honesty and compassion. The letter began with an expression of love. Charles wrote that regardless of what followed, Harry would always be his son, that nothing could change the bond between father and child, even when that bond was tested by impossible circumstances. He wrote about memories from Harry's childhood, moments of joy that had nothing to do with duty or institution, just a father and son being together. Then Charles shifted to the painful present. He explained that palace investigators had discovered serious financial irregularities connected to Meghan. He did not soften the language or hide behind euphemisms. He described the offshore account, the suspicious payments, the timing that correlated with royal events. He explained that the evidence pointed to a systematic monetization of royal access and information. Charles wrote that he understood how difficult this would be for Harry to accept. He acknowledged that Harry loved Meghan, that they had built a life together, that they shared children. He was not asking Harry to stop loving his wife, but he was asking Harry to look at the evidence objectively and understand why action had to be taken. The letter explained the decision clearly. Meghan's royal titles would be formally removed. She would no longer be able to use the style of Duchess or Her Royal Highness. The action was not personal vindictiveness, but institutional necessity. The monarchy could not allow its members to profit from their positions without facing consequences. Charles offered Harry a choice. He could stand by Meghan and accept that this would create permanent distance from the royal family. Or he could acknowledge what his wife had done, work with the family to address it, and begin the slow process of rebuilding trust. Neither option was easy, but both were available. The letter ended with another expression of love. Charles wrote that he would always be Harry's father, always available if Harry wanted to talk, always hoping for eventual reconciliation. But he also made clear that this decision was final. The evidence was overwhelming, and the institution required protection. Charles sealed the letter personally and arranged for it to be delivered by diplomatic courier to Harry's residence in California. He specified that it must be placed directly into Harry's hands, not given to staff or left at a security gate. Harry deserved to receive this news privately, with time to process it before anyone else intervened. The letter arrived at Harry's home on a Tuesday afternoon. Security called Harry to the gate where the courier waited. Harry signed for the envelope, recognized his father's handwriting immediately, and felt his stomach drop. Good news did not arrive by courier in sealed envelopes marked private and confidential. Harry read the letter in his office with the door closed. As he progressed through the pages, his expression moved from confusion to disbelief to anger. He read certain passages multiple times, searching for misunderstanding or misinterpretation. But the words were clear. His father was accusing Meghan of financial misconduct. His father was stripping her titles. His father was asking him to choose between his wife and his family. Harry's hands shook as he finished reading. He immediately called his father's private number. The call went to voicemail. He called again. Voicemail. He sent a text demanding immediate conversation. No response came. Finally, hours later, Charles called back. The conversation lasted less than 10 minutes. Harry shouted that this was persecution. Charles remained calm, stating the evidence was conclusive. Harry accused the family of bigotry and jealousy. Charles said this was about documented financial impropriety, not personal feelings. Harry demanded the investigation be stopped. Charles said it was already complete, and the decision was made. The call ended with Harry saying words he would later regret. He told his father that he was choosing Meghan, that he would stand by her no matter what lies the palace invented, that Charles had lost both his sons now. Then Harry hung up. The connection between father and son severed. The official announcement. The palace scheduled the announcement for 10 o'clock on a Thursday morning. The timing was deliberate, early enough to dominate the day's news cycle, late enough to ensure all major media outlets were fully staffed. The communications team had spent days crafting the statement, revising every word to balance transparency with legal caution. The statement was released simultaneously across all official palace channels, the royal website, social media accounts, direct transmission to accredited journalists. Within seconds, phones began ringing in newsrooms across the world. Editors shouted instructions. Producers scrambled to interrupt regular programming. The biggest royal story in years was breaking, and everyone wanted to be first with the details. The statement was brief but devastating. It confirmed that following a comprehensive financial review, serious concerns had been identified regarding the conduct of the Duchess of Sussex during her time as a working member of the royal family. The statement noted that these concerns related to financial arrangements that violated established protocols governing how members of the royal family conduct themselves. The palace announced that His Majesty the King had made the decision to remove the royal titles and styles previously held by the Duchess. Effective immediately, she would no longer use the title Her Royal Highness or be referred to as the Duchess of Sussex. The statement emphasized that this decision was made after careful consideration of substantial evidence and in consultation with senior advisors. Critically, the statement avoided specific accusations. It did not mention the offshore account. It did not detail the payments. It did not name the companies involved. Legal counsel had been clear. Specific allegations could trigger defamation lawsuits. The statement needed to be serious enough to justify the unprecedented action, while vague enough to avoid legal vulnerability. The final paragraph expressed regret that these circumstances had arisen. It stated that the royal family remained committed to upholding the highest standards of integrity and that difficult decisions were sometimes necessary to protect the institution. The statement noted that no further comment would be provided at this time. The media reaction was instantaneous and explosive. Within minutes, every major news outlet was running breaking news alerts. Television networks interrupted regular programming. News anchors struggled to maintain composure while reading the unprecedented announcement. Royal correspondents who had covered the family for decades said they had never seen anything like this. Social media platforms erupted. Hashtags supporting and condemning the decision trended simultaneously. People who had always defended Meghan called the action race segregation persecution. Others said the palace had finally shown backbone after years of tolerance. Arguments erupted in comment sections. Families debated across dinner tables. The announcement divided opinion instantly and completely. Within an hour, the palace communications office was overwhelmed. Hundreds of media requests flooded in. Journalists demanded interviews, background briefings, access to officials who could provide context. All requests were declined. The statement was final, and the palace would not elaborate. Foreign media picked up the story with particular intensity. American networks devoted entire segments to analyzing what had happened. Commentators debated whether this proved the royal family was practicing bigotry or whether Meghan had genuinely committed serious misconduct. European outlets examined the constitutional implications. The story dominated international headlines in ways few royal announcements ever achieved. Financial markets even reacted. British tourism stocks briefly dipped on concerns about damage to the monarchy's reputation. Betting companies offering odds on royal family matters suspended their services, unsure how to price this unprecedented situation. But the loudest silence came from California. Harry and Meghan's representatives issued no immediate response. Their social media accounts remained quiet. The house in Montecito appeared undisturbed from outside, though security presence had visibly increased. Journalists camped outside the gates waiting for any sign of reaction. Inside the palace, staff monitored the situation carefully. They had prepared for outrage, for accusations, for media chaos. What they had not fully prepared for was the waiting. The silence from Meghan and Harry felt ominous, like a storm gathering strength before it struck. And everyone knew the storm was coming. Meghan's counterattack. The response came 36 hours after the palace announcement, long enough to craft a strategic message, long enough to coordinate with lawyers and publicists. When Meghan finally spoke, she did so through carefully chosen channels designed for maximum impact. A statement appeared on her and Harry's foundation website. It was personal, emotional, and devastating in its accusations. Meghan expressed shock and profound sadness at the palace's actions. She wrote that she had dedicated years to serving the monarchy with integrity, only to be rewarded with public humiliation based on false accusations. The statement categorically denied any financial wrongdoing. Meghan characterized the offshore account as a legitimate business arrangement established with proper legal counsel for managing her pre-existing entertainment career assets. She claimed the palace had known about these arrangements from the beginning. She suggested the timing of accusations, years after she stepped back from royal duties, was suspicious and vindictive. Then came the accusation that dominated headlines. Meghan stated plainly that she believed these actions were motivated by bigotry. She wrote that from the moment she entered the royal family as a woman of color, she had faced different standards and harsher scrutiny. She suggested that white family members had engaged in similar business arrangements without consequences. The investigation, she claimed, was simply an excuse to punish her. The statement announced that Meghan was consulting with legal counsel regarding potential defamation claims. She reserved the right to pursue all available remedies to clear her name. She framed herself as a victim of institutional bullying, a mother protecting her family from an organization that had never truly accepted her. The response was brilliant from a public relations perspective. It shifted the narrative from Meghan's conduct to the palace's motives. It transformed a financial scandal into a racial justice issue. News outlets that had reported the title stripping now had to cover bigotry accusations with equal prominence. Within hours, celebrities spoke out in Meghan's defense. American talk show hosts devoted segments to discussing palace bigotry. Civil rights organizations issued statements expressing concern. Coverage in the United States turned sympathetic, portraying Meghan as a woman persecuted by an outdated, discriminatory institution. Meghan's lawyers released a separate statement threatening legal action if the palace released evidence publicly. They argued that financial records were private and that publishing them would constitute harassment. Harry appeared in a video message posted to social media. He looked exhausted but defiant. He stated that he stood completely behind his wife. He accused his family of using the same tactics against Meghan that had been used against his mother. He said he would not allow history to repeat itself. The palace faced exactly the nightmare they had feared. Evidence of financial misconduct was being buried under accusations of bigotry. Meghan had positioned herself as victim rather than someone facing legitimate questions. Public opinion in Britain remained divided, but international sympathy swung toward Meghan. The counterattack had landed with devastating effectiveness. The truth emerges. The palace had anticipated Meghan's counterattack. They had prepared for accusations of bigotry and persecution, but they had also prepared something else. Evidence that could not be dismissed or reframed. Evidence so concrete that it would speak for itself. 3 days after Meghan's statement, a major investigative journalist received an anonymous package. Inside were documents that had been carefully redacted to protect certain privacy concerns while revealing the essential facts. Bank statements showing the offshore account. Corporate registration records proving the ownership chain. Transaction receipts with dates and amounts clearly visible. Most damning were email exchanges between Meghan and representatives of various media companies. The emails discuss specific payments in exchange for access to information about royal family activities. One email explicitly mentioned providing details about a private family gathering in exchange for £25,000. Another discussed arranging exclusive photographs from a royal event in exchange for £15,000. The journalist verified the documents through multiple independent sources. Financial experts confirmed the bank statements were authentic. Corporate lawyers verified the registration records matched official government databases. Digital forensics specialists examined the email metadata and confirmed they had not been fabricated or altered. The story published on a Sunday morning. It included photographs of key documents with sensitive information blacked out. It quoted from emails that showed clear intent to monetize royal access. It traced money flows from entertainment companies to the offshore account with precision. The evidence was overwhelming and undeniable. Public reaction shifted immediately. People who had defended Meghan as a victim of bigotry now confronted documented proof of financial misconduct. The emails particularly damaged her credibility. They showed calculated planning rather than innocent misunderstanding. They revealed someone deliberately profiting from royal position while publicly claiming to be persecuted. Social media conversations changed tone dramatically. Supporters who had accused the palace of lying now struggled to explain the documented evidence. The bigotry accusation, while still raised by some, lost much of its power when confronted with Meghan's own words discussing payments for royal information. American media coverage became more nuanced. News outlets that had initially supported Meghan began questioning whether the palace's actions might have been justified after all. Talk show hosts who had condemned the title stripping now acknowledged the evidence raised serious concerns. Meghan's legal team issued a brief statement claiming the documents had been obtained illegally and that their release violated privacy laws. But the damage was done. The public had seen proof that contradicted her claims of innocence. The palace maintained official silence. They did not confirm or deny involvement in the leak. They simply allowed the evidence to speak for itself. Sometimes the most powerful response was no response at all. The truth had emerged, and it was exactly what the palace had said it was from the beginning. Meghan had monetized her royal position systematically and deliberately. The hidden bank account was not a legitimate business arrangement. It was evidence of betrayal. And if you enjoyed this video, like and subscribe, and also click the next video shown on your screen.